Tonight, someone who has been quietly studying the shape of your silence is about to say something no one expected, and when those words leave their lips, the version of you that others created in their minds will begin to collapse. For a long time, people believed they understood you because they had witnessed fragments. They saw the way you smiled when the room needed light. They noticed how quickly you changed the subject when a conversation came too close to your pain. They watched you continue showing up, answering messages, completing responsibilities, offering kindness even when your own heart felt like an empty house after midnight. From the outside, you appeared steady. That became the story everyone accepted. They called you strong because they never saw your hands trembling behind closed doors. They called you independent because they did not know how many times you had wished someone would simply notice that you were tired. They called you distant because they mistook your carefulness for coldness. And with every label they gave you, the truth became harder to explain. But your future partner did not meet the version of you that others had already named. They noticed the pauses. It began in a room filled with voices, warm lights, and the faint sound of glasses touching across a crowded table. You were surrounded by people who had known you in different seasons. Some had known you when you were younger and more willing to forgive without boundaries. Others had met you after life taught you to measure every promise. They exchanged stories about you with the confidence of people who believed history gave them ownership of your identity. Your future partner sat quietly at the edge of the conversation. At first, they smiled politely. Someone described you as the one who never gets attached. Another person laughed and said, "They always move on. Nothing really gets to them." A third voice added, "You can never tell what they're thinking. They keep everyone at a distance." The room responded with easy agreement, as though your heart had been summarized in 3 harmless sentences. You lowered your eyes toward the table. No one noticed the small change in your breathing. No one except the person across from you. Your future partner watched your fingers tighten around the edge of a folded napkin. They saw the smile you offered the room, a smile so practiced it nearly convinced everyone. But there was something behind it, something they had witnessed before in quieter moments. They remembered a rainy afternoon when you stopped beneath the awning of a closed bookstore to help an elderly stranger gather spilled papers from the sidewalk. You had been running late, yet you stayed until every page was dry enough to carry. You never mentioned it afterward. They remembered the night you received a message that changed your expression for half a second. You placed your phone face down, asked everyone else if they were okay, and carried the heaviness alone until you thought no one was watching. They remembered the way you listened when others spoke, not waiting for your turn, not searching for a clever response, but listening as though every person contained a hidden room worth entering carefully. Those were not the actions of someone who felt nothing. Those were the actions of someone who felt too much and had learned to hide the cost. The conversation continued around you, but your future partner no longer heard the laughter in the same way. A question had begun forming inside them: how many people had mistaken your protection for your personality? Then someone spoke about a relationship from your past. They did not know the entire story, but they repeated the part that made you appear difficult. According to them, you had walked away suddenly. You had refused to explain. You had closed the door without looking back. The details were clean and simple. The truth had been anything but. You had stayed far longer than anyone knew. You had tried to repair what was breaking while protecting the reputation of the person who kept hurting you. You had rewritten your needs into smaller requests. You had forgiven apologies that never became changed behavior. And when you finally left, you carried the blame quietly because revealing everything would have wounded people who were not responsible for what happened. Your silence had protected others. Yet that same silence had been used as evidence against you. Your future partner saw the shadow move across your face when the old story was told. For one suspended moment, they expected you to defend yourself. You did not. You took a sip of water and asked whether anyone needed more food. That was when something changed inside them. Until then, they had admired your composure. In that moment, they began to understand its origin. Your calm was not the absence of conflict. It was the discipline of someone who had survived situations where reacting honestly only made things worse. Still, they said nothing. Not yet. They wanted to be certain they were not inventing a version of you for their own comfort. So over the next several days, they paid closer attention, not with suspicion, but with care. They noticed that you always remembered the smallest details people revealed. A coworker's mother had a medical appointment, and you quietly asked how it went. A friend had mentioned a childhood song once, and months later you sent it to them on a difficult morning. You carried pieces of other people's lives as if they mattered. But when someone asked how you were doing, your answer remained brief. I'm okay. You said it with warmth. You said it with finality. Your future partner began to wonder when you had first learned that honesty could become a burden to others. One evening, they found you standing alone on a balcony after everyone had gone inside. The city below shimmered through a thin summer haze. Traffic moved like rivers of red and white light. Somewhere in the distance, music drifted from an open window, soft enough to feel like a memory. They joined you without speaking. For several minutes, neither of you disturbed the silence. Then they asked, "Do you ever get tired of people deciding who you are before they ask?" Your head turned slowly. It was not a dramatic movement, but they saw the question reach somewhere deep. You gave a quiet laugh, though there was no humor in it. People usually believe the version that requires the least explanation, you said. They leaned against the railing beside you. And what version is that? The easy one. You looked back toward the city. The one where I don't need much. The one where I'm never hurt. The one where leaving costs me nothing. Your future partner felt the weight of those words. They wanted to ask who had taught you to disappear inside your own story. They wanted to ask how many times you had been called strong when what you needed was permission to fall apart safely. Instead, they said, "I don't think you leave easily." Your expression shifted. It was subtle, but real. "No," you answered. "I leave late." That sentence stayed with them. It followed them home. It remained in their thoughts while they stood beneath the kitchen light, holding a glass of water they had forgotten to drink. It returned the next morning while they watched sunlight spread across the floor. "I leave late." For words had overturned everything they had heard about you. People thought you were quick to detach. The truth was that you endured until remaining became a betrayal of yourself. People thought you were mysterious because you enjoyed being unreadable. The truth was that you had once offered your inner world freely, and someone had used the map against you. People thought you did not need reassurance. The truth was that you had stopped asking because disappointment felt easier when it arrived without expectation. Your future partner now understood that loving you would require something deeper than affection. It would require patience without pressure. Consistency without performance. A willingness to believe the parts of you that had no witnesses. But understanding this created a new fear within them. What if they were already too late? They thought of every moment when they had remained silent instead of telling you what they noticed. Every time they had allowed others to misunderstand you because correcting them might have revealed how deeply they cared. Every conversation where they had protected their own uncertainty while you stood alone inside an unfair story. The realization disturbed them. They had not wounded you directly, but perhaps silence had made them a witness who looked away. Days later, the same group gathered again. This time, the atmosphere was different. Rain pressed softly against the windows. Coats hung near the door, damp at the shoulders. A candle flickered between half-finished cups of coffee, casting restless shadows across familiar faces. You arrived later than everyone else. When you entered, the room briefly quieted. Your future partner looked up and immediately sensed that something had happened. You greeted everyone, but your voice was thinner than usual. Your eyes held the exhaustion of someone who had received news they were not ready to discuss. You chose a seat near the doorway, as though some part of you wanted an easy escape. The conversation moved through ordinary subjects until someone brought up your future. They said you were probably happiest alone. Another person agreed. Some people just aren't built for deep relationships. A few heads nodded. Your future partner felt something tighten in their chest. You gave the familiar smile. But this time, it did not fully form. Before you could redirect the conversation, your future partner placed their cup on the table. The sound was small, yet everyone heard it. "That isn't true," they said. The room changed. You looked at them, startled. The person who had spoken raised an eyebrow. "What isn't true?" "That they're happier alone." The rain seemed louder against the glass. Your future partner's voice remained calm, but there was no hesitation in it now. "You all think they keep people out because they don't care. But they keep people out because when they let someone in, they don't know how to care halfway." No one interrupted. Your future partner continued, though they never looked away from you. "You think they move on quickly because they don't explain what it took to leave. You think they're unaffected because they refuse to make their pain everyone else's responsibility. You call them distant, but I've never met anyone who notices people more carefully." Your throat tightened. It felt as though the room had tilted. For years, you had imagined what it might feel like to be understood. You assumed it would bring relief. Instead, it frightened you. Being misjudged had become familiar territory. Being seen with accuracy felt far more dangerous. Someone attempted a nervous laugh. "You seem to know a lot." Your future partner finally glanced toward the others. "I know enough to recognize when everyone has mistaken someone's wounds for their nature." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of reconsideration. Faces that had always looked at you with certainty now carried questions. People searched their memories, perhaps realizing that the stories they repeated had been incomplete. Perhaps remembering moments when your kindness had been invisible because it arrived without announcement. But your future partner was not finished. They reached into the inside pocket of their coat. You noticed the movement immediately. Something small and folded rested in their hand. Your heart began beating harder, though you did not understand why. They looked down at the object, then back at you. "There's another reason I know," they said quietly. The room seemed to disappear around those words. They stood and crossed the narrow space between you. With each step, the confidence in their face gave way to something more vulnerable. When they stopped beside your chair, you saw that the folded paper was old. The edges were softened from being handled many times. You recognized the handwriting before they opened it. It was yours. But you had never written anything to them. Your breath caught. "Where did you get that?" you whispered. Your future partner's eyes filled with an emotion they had been hiding for much longer than anyone in that room understood. They did not answer immediately. Instead, they unfolded the paper carefully, revealing a letter you had written years ago, a letter you believed had been lost, a letter containing the one truth you had never spoken aloud to anyone. Then they said, "Before I tell you how this came to me, there is something you need to know about the person you wrote it for." And when they spoke the next name, every unfinished piece of your past began moving toward the surface. The name did not belong to the person everyone expected. It belonged to Elena. The room seemed to tighten around you. For a moment, you could not place the sound of it inside the present. Elena belonged to another season, another version of your life. Her name carried the scent of old paper, hospital corridors, and the lavender lotion she used to keep beside her bed. She had been your closest friend before distance, illness, and unfinished conversations turned her into a memory no one around the table had ever heard you explain. Your future partner watched recognition move through your face. "You knew her?" you asked. Their answer came softly. "She was my cousin." The word struck with such precision that your hands went still. You looked from the letter to their face, searching for some sign that this was a misunderstanding. Elena had spoken about family, but never clearly. There had always been complications surrounding them, old arguments, long separations, relatives who loved each other from opposite sides of silence. Your future partner lowered their gaze to the page. "She gave this to me 3 days before she died." No one in the room moved. Even the rain seemed to quiet. You heard the sentence, but your mind refused to accept it. The last time you had seen Elena, she had been sitting near the window of her apartment, wrapped in a gray blanket, pretending she was not in pain. You had argued that afternoon, not loudly, but deeply. She had accused you of protecting everyone except yourself. You had told her she did not understand. Then you left. You planned to return when you were less angry. Life did not give you the chance. Your future partner unfolded the letter fully. "She told me you wrote it after the worst night of your life," they said. "She said you never intended anyone to read it. Not even her." You remembered. The memory arrived whole. A kitchen clock glowing 2:17 in the morning. A single lamp burning above the table. Your eyes swollen from crying, your phone turned off because you could not bear another apology from the person who had broken your trust and then blamed you for noticing. You had written without thinking. Not a letter to a lover. Not a goodbye. It had been addressed to the person you hoped might exist someday. The person who would not make you prove your worth through suffering. You had written to your future partner before you knew their face. You had written everything. The fear that you were becoming too guarded to love. The shame of staying where you were diminished. The secret hope that one day someone would recognize your heart before your defenses convinced them to leave. By morning, you hated every line. You tore the pages from your notebook, folded them, and hid them inside a book at Elena's apartment. You thought you had discarded them later. But Elena had found them. Your future partner looked toward the others in the room. I think this conversation should continue privately. No one argued. Chairs shifted. Cups were gathered with unnatural care. People avoided your eyes as they left, embarrassed by how confidently they had spoken about a life they had never understood. Within minutes, only you and your future partner remained. The candle had burned lower. Shadows stretched across the table between you. You stared at the letter. Why didn't you tell me before? They sat across from you, but the distance felt different now. Not social. Not cautious. Fragile. Because I didn't know it was yours. They explained that Elena had handed them the folded pages without a name attached. She had made them promise not to search for the writer. She said the letter was not an invitation to interfere. It was a reminder. A reminder of what? Your future partner looked at you with an honesty that made your pulse quicken. To never mistake guardedness for emptiness. They traced one finger along the fold in the paper. She told me that someday I might meet someone who looked strong because they had no other choice. She said I would be tempted to admire that strength and forget to ask what it cost. Your eyes burned. That sounded like Elena. Even near the end, she had been trying to leave wisdom behind for people who had not yet realized they needed it. Your future partner continued. For years, I carried this letter through every move. I read it when I was about to stay in relationships that looked right but felt hollow. I read it when I started believing real connection was something people invented because they were afraid of being alone. They paused. And then I met you. The meaning settled slowly. They had recognized the spirit of the letter before recognizing the handwriting. Small details had begun to connect: the way you spoke about tenderness as if it were a responsibility, the way you distrusted grand promises but softened around quiet consistency, the way certain phrases escaped you that also appeared on those pages. Still, they had resisted the possibility. Why, you asked? Because believing it was you would have meant admitting something I wasn't ready to admit. Your future partner folded their hands together. I had already started caring about you. There it was. Not dramatic. Not polished. More powerful because of how simply it entered the room. You looked toward the rain-streaked window. Part of you wanted to step closer to the confession. Another part searched immediately for danger. You had learned that beautiful words could arrive before painful behavior. Hope had often been the first step toward regret. They seemed to sense the retreat inside you. I'm not asking you to respond, they said. I'm telling you because I've already hidden behind silence long enough. You faced them again. What exactly did Elena say about me? Their expression changed. There was more. You saw it immediately. She said you would blame yourself. For what? For not going back. The air left your chest. The argument returned in sharper detail. Elena's tired voice. Your hand on the doorknob. The way she had called your name after you stepped into the hallway. You had stopped. But you did not turn around. You told yourself there would be another day. For years, that moment had followed you. You imagined 100 different endings. You imagined returning 5 minutes later. You imagined sitting beside her bed and apologizing. You imagined hearing her say she understood. None of it happened. Your future partner reached across the table but stopped before touching your hand, leaving you the choice. She knew why you left. A tear slipped down your cheek before you realized you were crying. She thought I abandoned her. No. You weren't there. No, they repeated. But she told me. You stared at them. They took a careful breath. Elena knew you were breaking. She said she kept pushing because she believed honesty would save you. She didn't realize how exhausted you were until she saw your face when you walked out. The room blurred. She tried to call you, your future partner said. Not to ask you to come back. To apologize. You remembered the missed call. You had seen it. You had been sitting in your car beneath a streetlight, forehead pressed against the steering wheel. Her name lit the screen. You let it ring because you were afraid the conversation would become another argument. By the time you called the next morning, someone else answered. Your future partner finally placed their hand over yours. This time, you did not pull away. She left you a message, they said. Your breathing stopped. There was no message. Not on your phone. They reached into their coat again and removed a small digital recorder, older than the devices people carried now. The plastic casing was scratched. A faded strip of tape had been placed across the back. Your name was written on it. You stared at the handwriting. Elena's handwriting. Your future partner placed the recorder between you. She asked me to give this to you if I ever found you. The weight of the moment became almost unbearable. You had this the whole time? Not the whole time. My aunt found it last month while clearing Elena's storage. She called me because my name was written beneath yours. They turned the device over. There it was. Your name. Then theirs. Two people who had not yet met, connected in ink by someone nearing the end of her life. A cold shiver moved through you. What did she know? I don't know. You listened to it? Their eyes held yours. Only the first few seconds. Enough to hear her say it was meant for you alone. You looked down at the recorder. For years, you had carried your final moment with Elena as a private sentence. You had built an entire identity around guilt no one knew was there. Every time someone called you distant, some part of you believed they were right. You had failed to return when it mattered. Perhaps distance was not protection. Perhaps it was who you had become. Now a voice from the past waited inside a small machine. Your thumb hovered near the play button. But you could not press it. What if she was angry? Your future partner's hand tightened gently around yours. Then you will hear the truth. What if the truth doesn't free me? Then you won't carry it alone. The answer entered a place inside you that had remained untouched for years. Not because it promised everything would be painless. Because it promised presence. You picked up the recorder. The device felt heavier than it should. When you pressed play, static filled the room. A faint mechanical hum followed. Then Elena's voice emerged, thin but unmistakable. Hey! Your mouth opened, but no sound came. She released a small breath on the recording. If you're hearing this, then something happened before I could make things right. You covered your lips with your free hand. Your future partner did not look away. Elena continued. I need you to know that I was wrong to push you that day. I kept telling you to choose yourself, but I didn't see that you were already trying. You were just doing it imperfectly, like all of us do. A quiet pause. You didn't abandon me. Your shoulders shook. You hear me? You did not abandon me. I knew you loved me. I knew it even when you walked out. You closed your eyes. The sentence you had waited years to hear arrived in the voice you thought you would never hear again. But the message continued. There is something else I need to tell you, and you may not understand it yet. Static crackled. I found your letter. Your future partner looked down. I shouldn't have read it, but I did. And I'm not sorry, because those pages told me something you would never admit. You still believe there is someone who can meet you without asking you to become smaller. A weak laugh escaped her. I believe it too. The recording paused again, long enough that you checked whether it had stopped. Then Elena said something unexpected. I met them. Your eyes opened. Your future partner went still. On the recording, Elena's breathing became labored. Not in the way you think. And not for very long. But I met the person I believe those pages were meant for. You turned toward your future partner. They looked as stunned as you felt. Elena continued. They don't know you yet. They don't know why I'm giving them your words. But one day, circumstances may bring you into the same room. When that happens, both of you will probably be afraid. The candle flame flickered violently. You will be afraid they'll see too much. They will be afraid they won't be enough. Your future partner's face lost color. But fear won't be the greatest danger, Elena said. Silence will. The recorder crackled again. There is a truth about the night you wrote that letter. A truth you were never told. The person who hurt you did not act alone. Your blood turned cold. The room suddenly felt unfamiliar. You leaned closer to the recorder. Elena's next words came slowly. Someone you trusted gave them the information they used against you. Your mind raced through faces, conversations, private details only a few people had known. Then Elena whispered a name. The recorder distorted. You heard only the first syllable before the sound broke into static. "No," you said, grabbing the device. The message returned for one brief second. "If you want to understand why they did it, look inside the blue envelope. I kept it where we hid things as children." Then the recording ended. The silence afterward felt enormous. You pressed play again. Nothing. The battery light faded. Your future partner stood. What blue envelope? You looked toward the dark window, but you were no longer seeing the rain. You were seeing Elena's childhood home. The narrow staircase. The upstairs bedroom. The loose floorboard beneath the old wooden chest where you and Elena had hidden letters, photographs, and secrets when you were teenagers. That house had been empty for years. But not anymore. It had been sold 2 weeks earlier. And the new owner was someone you knew. Someone who had been sitting at the table less than an hour ago, listening quietly while your future partner defended you. Someone who had left the room without saying goodbye. Your phone vibrated. A message appeared from an unknown number. You opened it. There was no greeting. Only a photograph of a blue envelope resting on a familiar wooden floor. Beneath it were 7 words. You were never supposed to hear her message. My beloved child. For several heartbeats, neither of you spoke. The photograph on your phone felt impossible to ignore. The blue envelope rested exactly where Elena had said it would be, beneath the loose floorboard in the room where 2 children once believed that every secret could sleep safely forever. But now someone else had found it. Your future partner looked at the screen, then back at you. Fear did not fill their expression. Neither did panic. There was only quiet determination. We're not running from this, they said. Not anymore. The drive to Elena's old home unfolded beneath a sky washed clean by the rain. The roads shimmered beneath the streetlights, and every mile felt like a step toward a question you had avoided for years. You expected your heart to race with dread, yet something unexpected settled over you. For the first time, you were not carrying your past alone. When you reached the house, the porch light was already glowing. The new owner opened the door before either of you knocked. It was the same person who had been at the gathering earlier that evening. Their eyes were red from crying. I've been waiting, they whispered. You stood frozen. I didn't know who else to call. They stepped aside without another word. The house looked different, yet certain memories refused to fade. The old staircase still creaked beneath careful footsteps. The hallway still carried the faint scent of cedar. Time had changed the paint, the furniture, the windows, but not the feeling that love had once lived generously within those walls. The 3 of you climbed upstairs. The loose floorboard was already lifted. Resting beside it was the blue envelope. No locks. No hidden mechanisms. Just your name, written in Elena's unmistakable handwriting. Your fingers trembled as you picked it up. Inside were several photographs, a folded letter, and copies of old messages that explained everything you had never known. Years ago, someone close to you had shared your deepest fears and private conversations with the person who eventually betrayed your trust. Not out of hatred, but out of carelessness. They believed they were helping solve a misunderstanding. Instead, they unknowingly handed your vulnerability to someone who used it as a weapon. The betrayal that shaped your life had never been as simple as you believed. It was built from broken judgment, silence, and consequences no one intended. The person who had sent the photograph lowered their head. "I found these while renovating the room," they said. "When I realized what they were, I couldn't sleep. I recognized one of the names." Their voice cracked. "My parent was the one who shared those conversations." You looked at them in silence. "They regretted it for years," they continued. "Before they passed away, they told me they had been carrying unbearable guilt. They never realized the damage until it was too late." The room became still. You had imagined this moment so many different ways. You imagined anger. You imagined demands. You imagined finally finding someone to blame. Instead, standing in the quiet room where childhood memories still lingered, you discovered something unexpected. The weight inside your heart was no longer asking for revenge. It was asking to be released. Your future partner gently placed a hand on your shoulder. "They cannot rewrite yesterday," they said softly. "No," you answered. "But neither can I." You looked down at Elena's final letter. It contained only a few lines. If you're reading this, then life has finally brought you to the truth. Don't spend another decade searching for someone to punish. Spend it becoming someone who is finally free. The people who misunderstood you were never your final destination. The people who truly see you always were. Love bravely. You smiled through tears. That sounded exactly like her. A warm breeze drifted through the open window, although the night had been still only moments earlier. The curtains moved gently, carrying away the heaviness that had filled the room for so long. You closed your eyes. Not to escape the past. To thank it. Because every difficult chapter had quietly led you here, to a place where your story could finally be understood without being defended. When you opened your eyes again, your future partner was still there. They had not rushed you. They had not interrupted your healing. They had simply remained. You finally understood why they had recognized you before anyone else did. They had never fallen in love with the version people described. They had fallen in love with the truth you tried so hard to protect. The truth that your kindness survived disappointment. The truth that your hope survived heartbreak. The truth that your heart, though carefully guarded, had never stopped believing love could still arrive honestly. As dawn slowly painted the horizon with soft gold, the three of you stepped outside. The rain had ended. Birds greeted the morning as though welcoming a brand new beginning. You took one final look at the house. It no longer represented unfinished grief. It represented completion. The chapter that had haunted your spirit was no longer chasing you. It had finally become part of your testimony instead of your burden. Your future partner reached for your hand. This time, you didn't hesitate. You smiled, not because every question about tomorrow had been answered, but because you no longer feared facing tomorrow. You had discovered something greater than certainty. You had discovered trust. And trust, once rooted in truth, becomes the foundation on which lasting love quietly grows. So if these words have found you today, remember this gentle reminder. People may misunderstand your silence. They may misread your strength. They may create stories about your heart without ever taking the time to know it. But the right person will not rush to define you. They will patiently discover you. They will notice the quiet acts of love no one applauds. They will honor the scars you never use for attention. And they will choose to remain not because you are perfect, but because they recognize the beautiful soul behind every hidden chapter. May your heart find peace where guilt once lived. May hidden burdens become gentle lessons instead of lifelong chains. May every relationship built on misunderstanding fade, and may every connection rooted in honesty flourish beyond your expectations. May courage replace fear, hope replace regret, and love find you exactly as you are. And when that day comes, may you finally see yourself through the eyes of those who truly know your worth. Until then, walk forward with confidence. Your story is not defined by the chapters others misunderstood. It is defined by the ending you choose to write with grace, truth, and unwavering hope. If this fictional inspirational story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need a reminder that being truly understood can change everything. Until next time, may peace, hope, and love walk beside you every step of your journey.